Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Daniel. And today we're going to look at the marking criteria for the general training writing task 1. Now, if you have any questions after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is class 1 of 2 and will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to talk about task achievement, and then we're going to talk about coherence and cohesion. So by the end of the session, you'll be more familiar with these two concepts and see how they affect your writing marks. Now, during the class, there'll be questions that you need to answer. These will appear below the video. I'll tell you when to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for each one. So let's have a look at what the marking criteria is. Well, the marking criteria is 4 areas that you're marked on for your writing. And these areas are task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. We're going to look at the first 2 in this class. So how are they used? Well, you get a mark from 0 to 9 for each one of the 4 areas. 0 is the lowest, 9 is the highest. And then the examiner takes the 4 marks, adds them together, and gives you the average of those 4, and that's your writing mark. So let's start by looking at what is task achievement. Well, task achievement is how well you fulfill the instructions in the task. We're going to see what we mean by this in more detail. So here is the marking criteria for task achievement, and you see that it goes from band 6 here to band 9 here. Now it actually goes from 0 to 9, but we're just going to focus on 6 to 9 here. So the first thing we can notice is that it mentions the requirements of the task in all of the bands here. And the requirements of the task are the instructions, the things you need to do to complete the task. So depending how well you achieve those things, you get a higher band. So here it says you fully satisfy all the requirements. So that means you talk about everything in the instructions. And here it just says you address them. So you touch on them, but maybe you don't develop them enough. That's the second thing here as well. It talks about a developed response, and where you're actually giving answers and giving examples and expanding on your ideas. The next thing we can look at is it talks about a clear purpose, or a purpose that is generally clear. So your purpose in the general training would be, for example, apologizing would be a purpose for writing, or making a request. So that is your purpose, and you have to show that you're doing that in your writing. Other things is it talks about the tone here and here, tone. Now, tone is basically the formality. So if you're writing to a friend, you don't want to be very formal. If you're writing to a business or someone you don't know, you need to be more formal. Now that is your tone, and that's what it means by that. So let's just summarize some of those points. So the key parts of task achievement are to cover all the points in the instructions or the requirements. You need to present a clear purpose, i.e. a reason for writing. And you need to have the correct tone, formality for the person you're writing to. And it's 150 words, remember, task 1. So if you're writing less than that, you're probably not going to get very high marks, because it means you will have missed something from the task. And if you write more than that, you're probably going to run out of time. So 150 words is a good limit to try and aim for. So let's have a little bit of practice here. And we're going to see this instruction here. It says, a friend of yours is thinking of going to a music festival for the first time this summer. She has asked for your advice. Write a letter to your friend. In your letter, explain why you think he or she would enjoy music festivals. describe some problems he or she might have, and say if you would like to join your friend. So this is the task, and the requirements are these bullet points, okay? So what I would like you to do first is to look at the question below the video, question number 1, and answer how many different points do you have to include in your letter. And I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, so, well, the correct answer is 3. You can see here we've got these points, 1, 2, 3. It tells you what you need to do. Those are the 3 points you need to include. Anything extra that you include, you might lose marks. And if you miss one of these, you will lose marks for task achievement because you're not meeting the requirements. If you talk about all 3 of those things, you're meeting the requirements and you'll get higher marks for the task achievement. Now look at the next question below the video and answer this. Should your letter be formal or informal? I'll just give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, well, you can see here it says write a letter to your friends. So you know them, so it should be an informal letter in this case. Now, look at the next question below the video, and I want you to say which of these phrases would be most appropriate in this letter. So you've got, Dear James, to whom it may concern, sincerely take care. If you could contact me as soon as possible, it would be much appreciated. Get back to me when you can. Thank you and cheers. And I want you to just choose the correct options below the video. Okay. Well, as we said, it needs to be an informal letter because it's to your friend. So we need to choose the more informal phrases here. So between Dear James and to whom it may concern, Dear James is the informal version. To whom it may concern is very formal. You would use that when you're writing to someone that you don't know their name. For B, take care is more informal. It's more friendly. Sincerely, again, is a much more formal letter ending. For C, if you could contact me as soon as possible, this is very formal, but get back to me when you can. This is more informal, so that would be the one we want to use here. And then finally, cheers is more informal than thank you, although you could use thank you as well. But if you're trying to be more informal, you can use cheers when you're speaking to a friend. Now let's move on to look at coherence and cohesion. So first we need to understand what is coherence and cohesion. Well, coherence and cohesion is how well you connect your ideas together. Now that could be paragraphs, how well you put your ideas into paragraphs, or it could be one sentence connecting to another sentence and how well you do that. Let's look at a little bit more detail here. So here we have the marking criteria again, which the examiner sees. And you can see we've got band 6 to band 9 again. We're going to go through some of the key points in here. So here it talks about cohesion, and it talks about sequencing information and ideas. Information and ideas, information and ideas. And we can see that it uses different verbs. It says sequencing, organizing, and arranging. Now, sequencing, organizing, arranging, they basically have the same meaning. So it's about how well do you organize or sequence your ideas. So that's one aspect of coherence and cohesion. Another thing that it talks about here is cohesive devices. We can see this here, cohesive devices. Cohesive devices we're going to look at in a moment, but basically they're words that you can use to connect sentences or words that you can use to connect paragraphs. And depending how many of them you use, and if you use them in a natural or unnatural way, the higher the mark or the lower a mark you would get. So we can see here it says some under and overuse. So if you're underusing them, that means you're not using enough cohesive devices. And if you're overusing them, that means you're using too many, and it sounds, or when someone's reading it, it doesn't seem very natural. So it's getting the right balance of these, and depending how well you do that, the higher a mark you'll get for coherence and cohesion. Another thing that it talks about here is using referencing clearly. And this is mentioned in the band 6. Now, referencing is using like pronouns like he, she, it, they, those kinds of things, and words like these, this, those, that. Words like that, okay? So you're not repeating nouns again and again and again. So the better you use that, again, you can get a higher mark in coherence and cohesion. So let's summarize some of these points. So as I said, it's logically organizing your information. So that's paragraphs, and that's organizing, connecting sentences together. Using cohesive devices, or those linking words to connect your ideas. Referencing, so using pronouns and words like this, these, and that. We're going to look at these in more detail now. So let's look at paragraphing for the writing task 1 in the general training. Well, the first thing you need whenever you're writing a letter to someone is you need an appropriate greeting. You need to say hello. You never just directly start writing, oh, I want you to come to England. First you say, hello, da 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 da, okay? So you need an appropriate greeting. Then you would need a paragraph covering your reason for writing. Or as we saw before, that would be your purpose for writing. So that's very essential. After that, you would want paragraphs that are covering those bullet points. So the requirements of the task, you remember from before when it had the 3 different points. So you would want, it could be 1 or 2 paragraphs containing all of them. You could maybe have 3 paragraphs, or you could possibly have 1 big paragraph. It depends how you want to organize it. But you'll need paragraphs specifically for those 3 bullet points. And then you'll want an appropriate ending, as we looked at before. If it was informal, you might say, see you later, or cheers, or something like that. Whereas if it was more formal, you'd say like sincerely, and then your name. So here is an example of a task. It says, write a letter to your friend. In your letter, explain why you think he, she would enjoy music festivals, describe some problems you might have, and say if you would like to join your friend. And we're going to see these paragraphs here. Now, this is a short version of the letter, but what I would like you to do is look at the question below the video and see if you can rearrange these paragraphs so that it follows this structure of paragraphing here. And I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, so let's have a look at the correct answer. Well, the order should be like this. Okay, let's go through it. So we start with Dear James. As we said, that's an appropriate greeting. It's to your friend. So we need a friendly, nice start. So Dear James, perfect. Then we want to have your reason for writing. And you can see D says, I'm writing to give you a few tips on your music festival. So we've stated our purpose for writing. Then the next 2 paragraphs cover these 3 bullet points. So first it says, explain why you think she would enjoy music festivals. You're going to have a great time. Festivals are fun. Okay. Describe some problems. However, the weather can be awful. And say if you would like to join your friend. We can see here, I'd love to come along. So that means join. So you've covered those parts, those bullet points. And then you would need an appropriate ending. And we can see, we just say, speak soon, which is very informal, and lots of love, Michael. So that is how you would organize it. Now, of course, here, that's a very, very, very short version, particularly of these points here. You would want to write a lot more because this is not 150 words. But that just gives you an example of how you want to organize your different paragraphs. So we looked at paragraphing, and now let's move on to focus on that other point in the marking criteria, which was cohesive devices. So as I said, cohesive devices are linking words, words that connect sentences together. And we can use them for different things like adding and contrasting information. So when we talk about adding, we just mean, well, adding extra information, okay? So saying and. The simplest way of adding information is using the linking word and. So and is for adding. Contrasting would be using the linking word but. So you could say, I had a great time, but the weather was awful. That would be contrasting. Then you could have ones for expressing results and reasons. So results would be using the linking word so. It started to rain, so we went back home. So that's expressing the result. And then reason would be using the linking word because. So we went back home because it started to rain. Okay, so those are the some of the different types of cohesive devices. Now, in the writing task, as I said, you sometimes need to write formally and sometimes informally. And one of the big differences is the types of cohesive devices, because there are formal cohesive devices and there are informal cohesive devices. Let's have a look at them now. So some formal ones for adding information would be words like furthermore, in addition, moreover, and what's more. Now, they all just mean and. They all have that same meaning, but they're more formal ways of saying that. Other ones for contrasting would be words like however, conversely, and nevertheless, and they all mean but. And again, they're for connecting two different sentences. Expressing results and reason, well, so these all mean so. You could have therefore, as a result, and consequently. So they all mean so. Now, all of those are very formal ones, and you would only want to use them in formal letters. Now, the informal versions would be ones like this. You could have, again, adding information. So on top of that, and another thing is, one more thing is, so those are cohesive devices, and they're much more informal. You could also have ones for contrasting information. You could say still. Having said that, and that being said, these all just mean but, again. And then here, expressing results and reasons, that's so, so that, or which means, again, these all just mean so. Okay, so we've got formal versions and informal versions, and it's very important that you choose the correct ones so that you're getting the right marks for your task achievement, and it will help you to get higher marks for your coherence and cohesion. Now let's look at one more thing briefly, and that is referencing. This also came up in the marking criteria for coherence and cohesion. And as I mentioned then, referencing is using words like this, that, these, and those. Now, in your writing, it's important that you don't keep repeating the same noun. So you want to use words like this, that, these, and those, or pronouns like it, he, she. So let's say we were talking about a music festival. If you just keep writing the music festival, the music festival, the music festival again and again and again, it doesn't sound very natural. So you could just replace the music festival with it. You could say, oh, I'm looking forward to the music festival. It will be great. So if you use those pronouns to reference back to nouns, then that can really improve your writing mark as well. Remember, if you have any questions for us, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now take class 2 on this topic and complete the online training and practice activities. Thank you very much for coming to the class. We'll see you again. Goodbye.